You ever have a moment where you know you're going to die? Not guess, not assume, not fear. No, that was me. Flat on my back in a crater the size of a freighter pod, bleeding from a gash across my ribs, broken ribs grinding with every breath. Smoke curled from the shell impacts. The stench of plasma char and liquefied armor filled my nostrils. Overhead, alien troopships blotted out the stars like hungry vultures. They thought I was dead. They were almost right. I should have been just another corpse on that cursed moon. Just another forgotten soldier, swallowed up by the black. But fate, no, not fate, rage had other plans. They'd hit the 93rd Bastion hard. The Varari didn't fight like us. No lines, no honor, just swarm, shock, and slaughter. A trillion-strong empire of bio-coded killers who evolved on a death world soaked in methane and blood. And they came for us like a tidal wave of teeth and fire. Command had sent in everything. Armor, artillery, drones, orbital support. And us, infantry grunts, the last layer between Earth and extinction. We weren't the first wave. We were the ones who were supposed to hold. We didn't. By hour 36, our lines had collapsed. By hour 42, it was just me and whatever was left of Lieutenant Rio's detachment, scrambling through trench ruins, try to regroup with anyone still breathing. By hour 44, Rios was gone, and I was alone. The crater I lay in was still warm from the last impact. I blinked through the hood of my cracked helmet, tried to stabilize the feedback loop, screaming damaged diagnostics in my ear. One eye was swollen shut. My right hand wouldn't close around the rifle, but I still had my sidearm, and I still had breath. A Varari shock trooper landed nearby, for spider-like legs crunching against the churned rock. I didn't hesitate. I pressed the muzzle of my sidearm against its thorax and fired until the clip was dry. The body twitched, flailed, then stilled. The smell was worse than anything I'd ever known. Acid and rot. I remember rolling the corpse off me, coughing blood and laughing, not because it was funny, but because I realized something in that moment. They weren't afraid of our armies. They weren't afraid of our tech. But maybe, just maybe, they should have been afraid of me. I wasn't a hero. Hell, I was barely a corporal. No medals. No kill count to brag about. I'd failed the sniper qual. Washed out of recon. Just another dropout. Try and make up for it on the ground. But something changed that day. Something snapped. I made it through that night. And the next, I scavenged weapons from the dead, turned Varari gear into makeshift traps. I became the nightmare in their shadow. At first, it was just survival, ambush and retreat, hit and vanish. But then I started hearing things. Intercepted comms. Muted cries from their psychcasters. They had a word, spat through chittering mandibles and terrified clicks. Asherak. I didn't know what it meant. Not then. But I saw what it did to them. They searched for me, feared me, began avoiding whole zones where I was rumored to be. One soldier, one fractured grunt. And yet, they all started dying, screaming my name. It wasn't just combat after that. It was warfare distilled into vengeance. I had no orders, no backup, no hope, but I had purpose. For every fallen comrade, for every burned-out post, for every cry of hold the line that ended in silence, I gave them retribution. I left messages, carved their own symbols into the corpses I left behind. Crude warnings, ritualistic, psychological. I didn't plan it, but it worked. They call me the ghost in the ash, the butcher of Black Zone Theta, the man who couldn't die. And the more they feared me, the more they broke. I remember on day 11, I stumbled into a ruined comm station buried under rubble. Managed to get a signal out. Just 2 words before it died again. Still fighting. That was enough. For someone to notice. For command to reroute a recon drone. For word to spread. They didn't believe it at first. Said it was impossible. No one lasts that long alone. But the Varari believed it. They knew. They'd lost 300 elite soldiers trying to end me. They never came back. That was the beginning of the legend. But not the end. Not by a long shot. Because when they finally came to pull me out, I wasn't the same soldier who'd been left to die. I wasn't part of the army anymore. I had become something else. Something primal. Something the Varari couldn't understand. And they were about to learn. You can wipe out a battalion. You can raise a city. But if you leave one human breathing, just one, he might be the one to bring your whole empire down. They tried to study me. Not the humans, the Varari. After they failed to kill me in the craters of Black Zone Theta, they changed tactics. They stopped sending squads, stopped dropping bombs. Instead, they sent observers, drones, mind scouts, those vile creatures that drifted between thoughts like ghosts in ink. But the thing about probing a human mind, you don't always come back. I remember the first time I heard them speak my name. Not in English. Asherak. The word rasped and hisses in guttural screeches across the dying comms of fallen Varari Psytech. I played it back a dozen times. Asherak, Asherak, Asherak. At first, I thought it was code. Maybe a target designation. A fear marker. But after the third intercepted signal, I heard the emotion behind it. The trembling cadence. The respect. No terror. That's when I understood. Asherak wasn't just a name. It was a curse. I wasn't supposed to be alive. The Varari weren't built to fear. They were biologically engineered for war, genetically pruned of cowardice. But like all systems, push them far enough and they crack. By the time Central Command finally linked with me, I'd been listed MIA for 13 days. My voice came through the static, like a ghost's whisper. One soldier reporting in, still operational. Hostile territory compromised. They thought I'd lost it. They were half right. Command wanted to pull me out, send a dropship, get me treatment. But I told them no. I wasn't done yet. You see, the Varari had taken something from me. Not just my squad. Not just my flesh. They took away the illusion that war was clean, that strategy mattered, that dying for your planet made sense. So I made them bleed. I moved from crater fields to dead jungles, ash-choked forests where sunlight barely reached the floor. There, I crafted snares from alien roots, coated blades in Varari acid sacs, turned their own living tech against them. They never saw it coming. One time, I waited inside a dead war beast, a mountain-sized creature they use as mobile command, slid into its cooling innards, waited for the patrol to approach, then burst from its side, covered in steaming gore. 12 of them. They didn't make a sound, except for one. The commander. He screamed, but it wasn't a word. It was my name. Asherak. That's when I knew. I wasn't just killing them anymore. I was changing them. Undoing whatever genetic supremacy they'd been bred to believe in. Reports came in from other battlefronts. Varari hesitating, dropping weapons, muttering that same name. High Command laughed it off at first, until their front lines collapsed in 2 sectors. And in both cases, no human army. Just rumors that Asherak had passed through, then the Council got involved. Not Earth's, the Galactic Compact. The ones who used to pretend neutrality, who watched us burn from their lofty crystal towers, but never lifted a claw. They summoned me, sent a representative. Some shimmering, slug-like intellect encased in glass and arrogance. Spoke to me like I was a virus to be studied. Contained. You are not a soldier, it said. You are destabilizing entire war theaters. You become a myth. I just stared at it and replied, Good. It didn't understand, but the Varari did. You know what happens when an empire starts fearing one man? They start sending everything. They dropped the Titan on my last known coordinates. Not a war machine. Not a command beast. A goddamn planet breaker. And I survived it. I crawled from under the shattered impact site with broken teeth and a fractured spine and dragged myself across obsidian rock just to whisper Asherak into one of their comm relays, just to let them know I wasn't gone. By then, Earth had finally stopped trying to pull me back. They saw what I was doing, what one soldier, unleashed, could do to an empire. They didn't send me backup. They sent me supplies. Each drop marked not with my rank, but with the sigil of a black skull on a red field. No name, no serial, Just a message etched on the casing. Let the galaxy burn. Some say I went rogue. Some say I lost my mind. But I say this. You can program a species to dominate. You can create an army bred for conquest. But you can't teach them what to do when the prey fights back harder than the predator ever dreamed. I was one man, and they all died screaming my name. They say jungle warfare is about patience, about shadows, sound discipline, the long wait. But this wasn't Earth, and this wasn't a jungle. This was Karnath, 7, and its trees could kill you long before the Varari even smelled your sweat. The canopy stretched so high it blocked orbital scans. Black bark pillars coiled in fungus the size of trucks, roots that whispered when you stepped too close. The air was thick with spore clouds that ate metal. The locals called it the planet of rot. To me, it was a hunting ground, and I was the last predator left. The Varari had set up a biocamp near a ravine where the trees thinned, just enough to give them room for their pulsing spires and writhing comm towers. This was a new kind of war for them. They'd stopped advancing, stopped flanking. They were digging in, waiting. Not for me, from me. You ever see a species start fortifying jungle posts against one man? Yeah, me neither. Until Karnath. I moved through the muck like smoke, my armor ragged and patched with scrap, more alien now than human. The jungle welcomed me like an old friend. I understood its rhythm. I bled on its soil. I fed its roots with the enemy's bones. I wasn't just hiding. I was changing. The first patrol I took was sloppy. 3 Varari drones and a mounted warhound, low orbit flyer support buzzing overhead. They were scanning with ultraviolet, scent-lock protocols, neural-wide frequency sweeps. Didn't matter. They still stepped into my trap. You ever seen what happens when Varari neural circuits short inside a fungal burst mine? They don't just die. They scream. They scream like their souls are being peeled away. And the jungle listens. I dragged the last one into the roots of a tree that pulsed when it fed, left a shrieking translator unit, just loud enough for the others to hear when they came looking. Didn't have to fight the second patrol. They ran before they got close. They were starting to understand. Asherak wasn't coming. Asherak was already there. I found a boy in the trees. Human, no older than 15. Scavenger, maybe a refugee from a Civ transport down months ago. His eyes were sunken, clothes wrapped in jungle moss, a plasma pistol twice his size clutched like a prayer. He pointed it at me. "You're him," he whispered. "You're the Asherak, right?" I didn't answer. He lowered the gun anyway. They say you can't die, that you killed a titan with your bare hands. I just passed him a ration pack and kept walking. The story had grown legs, wings, fangs. I'd become something more than a soldier, more than a ghost, a message, a whispered legend they used to scare each other in the trenches. But here's the thing about legends. They're harder to kill than men. When the Varari tried to flush me out, they did it with fire. They brought down orbital sun lances, burned square kilometers of the jungle to ash in seconds. Trees boiled, rivers turned to steam. For hours, the night sky glowed orange. They thought they could torch me out, that I'd run. But I didn't, because I'd already moved in. I was inside their command post when the first beam dropped. I watched their commanders panic from behind a thermal vent, watched their faces twitch and convulse as internal pheromones shifted to fear. One of them even tried to self-destruct their uplink node. I stopped him. You ever hear a Varari general beg? Neither had I. Until then, he used his own soldiers as shields, pleaded in Broken Earth Standard, said they'd leave Karnath, surrender the entire sector. He offered peace. But I remembered Theta, Rios, the screams under that cratered sky. And I remembered the boy in the jungle, too afraid to blink because a monster still hunted in the dark. So I looked him in his dozen alien eyes and said, "No peace, just balance." Then I ignited the charge under the floor. The blast card wound into Karnath, so deep the ground bled gas for a week. Over 400 Vari died that day. Their war map burned. Their chain of command fractured. Asherak had struck again. Not a man, not a unit, a force of nature. And now they weren't just retreating. They were abandoning worlds, whole systems just to avoid me. But the war wasn't over. Not yet, because I'd just gotten word from Earth. A Varari fleet, bigger than anything we'd seen, was en route to a core colony. Millions of civilians. And they knew I'd intercept. They were counting on it. The transmission was brief, encrypted, routed through back-channel frequencies. So deep, even the Council's ears couldn't follow. Asherak, Varari fleet en route to Vega Prime. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. Civilian population, 12 million. They're not invading. They're erasing. You are cleared for all actions. No restrictions. They weren't sending a task force. Not a battalion. Not a warning. They were sending me. Vega Prime wasn't just a colony. It was one of Earth's core trade hubs. A jewel of rebuilt civilization after the Terran Reconstruction Wars. A place with open sky domes and oceans full of whales again. Kids flew kites on plasma winds. And now a Varari extermination fleet was coming to vaporize it. Because of me. No, because they feared what I represented. Not war. Not vengeance. Reckoning. I reached orbit aboard a stealth corvette the size of a bus. Black-clad, no insignia, silent as a thought. It didn't carry weapons. Just one. Me. The pilot was synthetic ghost. No name, no voice. Just a smooth silver mask and a nod as I stepped aboard. The moment I was inside, we folded space and vanished. The Varari wouldn't see us coming. Wouldn't even know we were near Vega Prime until it was too late. But they were ready for me. Their fleet arrived like a storm. 47 warships in a formation that blackened stars. Bioships layered in obsidian armor. Living cores pulsating beneath chitin and metal. Each one capable of turning a city to molten slag in seconds. And at the center of it all, a dread choir ship. I'd only seen one once. From a distance, it sang to the minds of its enemies. Broke discipline. Collapsed morale. Fried neurons. They didn't just want to kill Vega Prime. They wanted to hollow it out, break its people before its walls fell. I boarded them at speed 7. Through their blind spot. Through the chaos they didn't expect from a dead man. Cut through holes with a monoknife and planted 0-point charges in their life support arrays. 1 ship, then 2, then 5. Like a virus, I spread through their fleet. Their sensors screamed nonsense. Their hive mind buckled with conflicting data. Their own command codes echoed back at them, twisted, corrupted. Some ships fired on each other. Screaming Asherak had already breached their cores. They weren't wrong. Then I hit the dread choir. You can't describe the sound it made. It doesn't pass through ears. It crawls inside your mind. Regret, fear, guilt, magnified and looped until your soul fractures. But I'd walked through worse. I'd heard my squad's last screams in the dirt. I'd felt my lungs collapse under alien gas. I'd survived myself. They tried to break my mind. I let them in, and when they reached the core of who I was, all they found was rage. I tore through that ship like it owed me blood. Every wall, every nerve pulse corridor, every shrieking mouth of alien metal that tried to swallow me. I burned it all. When I reached the neural node at the heart of the choir, I didn't plant explosives. I spoke. You wanted a ghost? You wanted Asherak? I'm here. Then I flooded their signet with one thought. Run. The entire choir ship began to tremble, shudder, pulse erratically, because even their AI, grown from a million murdered minds, feared me. The fleet fractured in less than 20 minutes. Command ships jumped. Frigates turned on each other in madness. 2 capital vessels self-destructed when their crew refused to leave orbit with me on board. By the time Earth's reinforcement arrived, there was nothing left but debris. No enemy to engage. No fleet to repel. Just me, hovering above Vega Prime in a pod of torn metal and Varari blood, staring down at a city full of lives I'd saved. When they pulled me from orbit, the commander looked pale. I thought you were just a story, she whispered. I took off my helmet. My story isn't over. That night, on every human channel from Mars to the edge of known space, they broadcast a message, not a piece, but of warning. A single image, me, scarred, armored, eyes hollow with fire, and a caption translated into every major galactic tongue. He was just one soldier, but they all died screaming his name. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want my face plastered on every feed stream or turned into propaganda for children's training manuals. But when one man destroys a fleet, everyone takes notice. The Galactic Council summoned me. Formally, not through back channels or whispers this time. They didn't ask. They commanded. Earth sent me anyway, not because I followed orders, but because they knew I wouldn't listen to anyone else. And if I had to burn the Council's ivory halls to stop this war, so be it. The Council spire stood above the planet Kareth, a shimmering obelisk of crystal and gravity fields that rotated between 3 moons. It was the most secure diplomatic structure in the galaxy. Untouchable. Holy. I walked into its chambers alone. Every race in the galaxy had a seat in that dome. Hundreds of voices. Species with minds too vast to speak aloud. Others that used pheromones, light, or thought vibrations. And every single one of them looked at me like I was the bomb about to go off. I guess, in a way, I was the arbiter, some 10-limbed silk-skinned being who moved like smoke, spoke first. Asherak, human, you have become a contagion of myth. Your existence undermines diplomatic stability. Diplomatic stability? I echoed dryly. Your diplomacy failed when the Varari glassed Earth outposts and crucified our civilians on frontier moons. A chorus of disapproval rippled around the chamber. Not disagreement, discomfort. I'd said what they were too afraid to admit. The Arbiter waved a tendril, feigning calm. You have cost the Varari billions of lives. You destabilized 7 contested zones. Their highness now threatens to withdraw from the compact entirely. I smiled. Good. Let them run. That's when they dropped the real charge. We are placing you under interstellar sanction. From this moment forward, Asherak is not a soldier, not a citizen, not protected by galactic law. You are an outlaw. I stood there, silent. They expected me to protest, beg, flinch. Instead, I stepped forward, looked every species in that dome dead in the eye. Eyes, eye stalks, photoreceptors, and said, I never fought for your laws. I fought for those who couldn't. The news hit the networks in hours. The galaxy's most feared soldier had been exiled by the same council that once praised humanity for its restraint. Now, I was a rogue element. They thought it would shame me, cripple me, but they didn't realize. A legend doesn't need citizenship. It only needs a name. And the Varari? They celebrated. They issued a broadcast across every system. Asherak is no longer shielded. His protection is gone. His world has cast him aside. Let every hunter rise. Let the death contract be claimed. They wanted a public execution, a spectacle, a symbol to break the spirit of every human who still held the line. They offered wealth, genetic upgrades, entire planets to whoever killed me. Bounty hunters came, not amateurs, professionals, warlords, hive assassins, gene-spliced horrors bred in vacuum vats. And one by one they vanished. Some said I set traps in asteroids. Others whispered I fought in complete silence, never firing a shot, only leaving burning hulls in my wake. I never confirmed it, because by then I wasn't just a ghost of the Varari. I was starting to become a ghost to everyone. Then came the message that changed everything. A broken signal from a captured human freighter orbiting a mining moon near Zaretha's reach. They've taken prisoners, kids, families. They're taunting us. But they're not asking for surrender. They're asking for you, Asherak. A trap? Of course. But it didn't matter. I answered the call. Not as a soldier. Not as an agent of Earth. Not even as a human anymore, but as the consequence of every sin the Varari ever committed. As I suited up, I looked at my reflection in the armor. Scarred, war-torn, my skin stained with the memories of worlds that should never have bled. And I said to myself, quietly, if I must become the nightmare they fear, then let me be worse than that. The moon they chose wasn't random. Rhaegar. 6 was a mining husk, hollowed out decades ago. Its inside stripped of ore, its surface riddled with sinkholes and abandoned extraction shafts. The perfect place to hide war crimes behind rock and shadow. The Varari knew I'd come. They counted on it. And still, they built their fortress like walls could stop a myth. It wasn't just a base. It was a temple of death. Spires made of bone metal, broadcast towers that screamed psychic dissonance across the void, walls laced with sentient artillery that wept when it fired. The prisoners, over 300 humans, were paraded like livestock across upper gantries, displayed for the drones and the watching feeds. One child was even forced to wear a tattered cloth labeled Asherak's failure. They wanted a show. They wanted me to watch. So I didn't knock. I didn't send warnings. I just entered. No alarms trigger when I breached the outer perimeter. I didn't cut power. Didn't hack their comms. I wanted them to feel it. The sudden, suffocating silence. The sensation of pressure without cause. Of doom without direction. In war, silence is sacred. Because real predators don't roar. They arrive. The first to die didn't even see me. A corridor of sentries, all neural-linked, dropped in perfect sequence. Slumped over terminals, their cranial nodes overloaded from a single silent code burst. The code? My heartbeat. Recorded and warped, a frequency the Varari now associated with slaughter. By the time I reached the command quarter, the lights had dimmed across the facility. Not by system error, but because their own AI shut down the power in fear. It recognized me, and it wanted no part in what came next. I made my way toward the prison deck, moving like gravity had changed direction. Heavy, inevitable, guards formed ranks, activated void lances, and surrounded the prisoners with weapons drawn. The lead commander hissed through his mandibles, "We will not run this time. Asherak, let this moon be your grave." I said nothing, just walked forward. They fired. Plasma rounds, neural bursts, psionic detonators. A wall of death. But I moved through it. The suit I wore by then wasn't Earth standard. It was a fusion of human resilience and stolen Varari biotech, grown around me over time, where armor once protected, now vengeance endured. I walked through fire, and when I reached the line, I unleashed it. I didn't shoot. I didn't swing a blade. I activated the core. A micro-collapse of sound and pressure, a localized void breach that folded the hallway on itself, compressing time and sound to silence. They never even got to scream. When the air rushed back, I was the only one standing. And the children stared at me like I was death in a skin suit. A girl, maybe 10, looked up and asked, "Are you the reason they're afraid of the dark?" I knelt beside her, pulled off my helmet, showed her the face beneath the myth. Broken, human, still breathing. And I said, "No, sweetheart, the dark is afraid of me." We got them out. All of them. I left the moon burning behind me. Every Varari databank scrubbed. Every weapon melted to slag. I made sure the only message that survived was one etched into the crater's surface in scorched alien runes. "You invited Asherak." He answered. Back on Earth, I was offered absolution, a pardon, medals, a title, but I didn't go back. Because something had changed, not just in me. In the galaxy, entire Varari fleets were now going dark, vanishing, not from defeat, but fear. The rumor was worse than the man. They said I was no longer human, that I'd become the embodiment of war itself. Maybe they were right, because wherever they ran, I followed. It didn't happen in a grand battle, not in orbit, not with fleets colliding or banners raised. The day the Varari begged for mercy was a quiet one. Their high nest, once the center galactic terror, lay in the shard expanse, surrounded by gravity rifts and void currents that devoured scanners. No one could reach it, except me. I followed them there, not with armies, not with allies. Alone. I didn't need a fleet. I didn't need orders. I carried a message, and I made sure they heard it. Every system I passed through, I left something behind. A shattered dreadnought. A smoldering war base. A warning, written not in words, but in absence. Entire Varari forces vanished mid-transmission. Comms cut mid-scream. Stations found drifting, filled with claw marks and the name Asherak carved into the steel. I didn't have to kill all of them. Just enough. When I reached the edge of the shard expanse, I didn't sneak in. I walked straight into their space, unannounced. No stealth, no deception. And yet, not a single ship moved to intercept. Not one turret powered on. Because they knew I was not there to negotiate. I was not there for blood. I was there for justice. I breached a high nest by ripping through its living hull with a cannon forged from their own broken weapons. Their last Praetorians lined the path, shivering. They didn't raise their blades. They knelt inside their throne chamber. The supreme voice of the Varari quivered on its pedestal of bone. It looked down at me with a dozen glowing eyes. Its voice shook like glass on the edge of breaking. What do you want? Asherak? Is it vengeance? Annihilation? I took off my helmet. Let them see the face of what they tried to erase. Not a monster. Not a myth. A man. I walked up those stairs, face to face with a creature that had ordered the death of 1 billion souls. And I said, I want you to remember. It blinked, uncomprehending. I leaned in. Every time you raise a weapon, every time you breathe war, every time you think you are gods among the stars, remember me. Remember what one forgotten soldier did to your empire. Remember what happens when you corner a species that fights not for glory, but for each other. I turned and walked away, left them broken, shamed, shackled by their own fear. They could keep their lives. That was the punishment, because from that day forward, every shadow they passed, every flicker in the dark, every signal interference, they thought it was me, and maybe it was. I never returned to Earth, not because I couldn't, because I wasn't needed anymore. The name Asherak had become something greater than flesh, a myth that spread not from broadcasts, but from the mouths of those who survived. Children whispered it before bed. Soldiers scrawled it on their armor like a shield. Even the council retracted its sanction, quietly, afraid I'd hear it in return. But I never did, because legends don't walk back into the light. They stay in the dark, where the next war waits, where the helpless cry, where monsters dare rise again. And when they do, they'll remember he was just one soldier, but they all died screaming his name.